I want to go ahead on this Veterans Job Corps bill. I had anticipated that I would be speaking after the chairman of the committee, Senator Murray, but I'll take the liberty of going ahead and then with her comments coming as the chairman of the committee, which would normally it be the reverse. And I thank Senator Murray for her leadership in all of these veterans issues, but particularly the issue of unemployment among veterans when they come home from the war. Especially among veterans that are age 24 and less, the unemployment figure is even higher. Now, it's, I think, appropriate on this particular day, September the 11th, 11 years ago today, the fact that those terrorists hijacked the 4 commercial airliners, causing the crash at the World Trade Center, at the Pentagon, and in a field in Pennsylvania. What was happening also that morning was that police officers and firefighters and emergency personnel rushed to respond, and many lost their lives in attempts to save others. And the events of that morning mobilized American forces like we had not seen in years. One of the first mobilizations was our United States military. And they were called to serve bravely in remote corners of the globe. 11 years later, the mastermind of 9/11, Osama bin Laden, was taken down. And we now have an Al-Qaeda that is severely diminished. And we are bringing our troops home from that part of the world. But, Mr. President, for the troops, when they come home, the fight is not over. There's another fight when they get back home to America. It's a different type of battle. The unemployment rate among veterans returning from Iraq and Afghanistan was just under 11% in August. It's higher for those that are younger. And this problem is likely to continue to grow as we draw down in Afghanistan, just like we've already drawn down in Iraq. It's worth noting that there have been steps made in the right direction. This past summer, we passed legislation that'll help veterans get federal occupational licenses when their military training matches the civilian requirements. That was a bill that I had the privilege of sponsoring. It passed the Senate unanimously. It was passed by the House overwhelmingly. It was sent down and it was signed into law. And last year, we passed a bill granting tax benefits to companies that hire wounded warriors. But we have to do more. So we filed this legislation that the chairman of the committee, Senator Murray, will further explain. And this legislation is to create a Veterans Job Corps. It's modeled after the Civilian Conservation Corps of the 1930s. The Veterans Job Corps would put veterans back to work restoring and protecting Americans' public lands and waters, The bill would also create opportunities for veterans to serve as police and firefighters and first responders. We've had some success on this with a smaller scale project like the Veterans Fire Corps pilot program at the U.S. Department of Agriculture, which trains veterans to fight forest fires. In fact, it's been so successful that folks who run these programs say they can hardly keep trainees in the program because they're picked up for full-time employment so fast. So we're expanding this idea from this pilot study that has been so successful. We're expanding it now into the Veterans Job Corps. Now, Mr. President, 10% of this bill's money will go to hiring veterans with a specialty such as military police for civilian law enforcement and for military specialties such as a medic and firefighters for first responders. Not only will this bill help protect our communities, but the Veterans Job Corps will help address the federal maintenance backlog. The National Park Service has deferred maintenance totaling over $11 billion. This backlog has been caused by the gradual shifting of funding to the operations budgets of the Park Service at the expense of everything else. For example, at the Civil War battlefield in Fredericksburg, Virginia, a $42 million backlog in maintenance is preventing the upkeep of that vital piece of American history. Mr. President, I'm happy to say that a number of organizations have stepped forward to support this bill. The American Legion, the Military Officers Association of America, the Iraq and Afghanistan Veterans of America, the National Association of Police Organizations. All of them support this legislation. Mr. President, one of the greatest honors that I have in this job as senator is getting out to meet and to greet current members of our military all over the globe and to thank the veterans back here at home for their service to our country. When you meet some of these folks, both young and old, they've already done the tough job. And then they come home and they have tough times as well. These folks, they're hardworking, they're highly trained, highly disciplined, extremely skilled. We need to give them as many opportunities as possible to succeed when they get back home here in America. It's up to us to stand up and stand by our soldiers, sailors, airmen, Marines, and Coast Guardsmen. I want to urge the Senate, when we vote today at 2:15, to grant the motion for cloture so that we can get on the bill and then take up this bill and quickly pass it, so that those who have fought bravely for our nation can find employment when they come home. Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, I yield the floor, and I would suggest the absence of a quorum.